right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob. Okay, we're starting like this, are we? Uh, this is Rob from Smirking Gun, and we are doing the revisitation of the final season of The Man in the High Castle. I I did not mean to turn part two into a part three. I thought I was going to be doing two episodes at a time, but turns out I've got a lot to say about every one of these episodes so far. And another front to back piece of paper that I literally almost used every inch of to write my notes down. So I keep somewhat on some kind of track here. All right, so this episode is called The Box. But before we get into all that, which I always do and forget to bring up my own channel, which is, would be nice if you're a subscriber. Hit the bell for all notifications, hit the like button, all that crap. So also, this is these videos, in case you decided to just watch this one by itself, is because I was asked to revisit this. And darn it, if it wasn't a good idea, because here we are, and I have been having a great time talking about this show again for some reason, and it's a kind of a nice bookend for my experience with The Man in the High Castle, which is complicated. Those first three seasons that I covered episode to episode, man, you're like, the person I was back then and the person I am now, we really disagree on this show. So me from today is saying this show is a lot better than for all the things that I did like about the show. This show, the things that I didn't like, I was pretty much wrong about. So this is a really, really, really great show. And I want to thank, I should just say this right here because it's easier than sending an email, but I'm not going to say them by name because I don't want to give out people's actual names unless I have permission. But if you're out there listening, mystery subscriber, I will say your name if you don't care. I won't say your last name, but I'd say your first name. Because it's so weird just going on about how there's this mystery subscriber. It's like I have a girlfriend in Niagara Falls. She lives in Canada. You've never seen her. Anyway, this episode is called The Box. It also could be called It Was War, because that's kind of the big through line, I think, through all of these kind of the stories that are going on in this episode. Because you've got John Smith talking at the, with Juliana at the end of this about what he did. You got Toru, Kito's son, talking about what he did. You got Wyatt talking about what they're gonna do. And that he's done it before. And in the middle of this, we got the BCR and them. They bring up a poem that we're going to go into detail about, and then we're going to talk about why that's important to me. So there's a lot going to happen in this video, and I don't know how long it's going to be again, but if you're here to listen, I'm here to talk about it. But we are going to still break it down, but this time we're breaking it down like this. We're going to have the Helen and John Smith stuff. We're going to have the Juliana stuff. And then we're going to have all the San Francisco stuff all in one thing. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Helen and John. Because it's pretty succinct and not the big crux of this episode. But it's important nonetheless to where we're going in this series. And it's just Helen goes, here it is, just Helen goes back to John at the beginning of the episode. And it's just, after episode 2's heartbreaking scene of Jennifer, that kid, that crying was, that sorrow, that despair that she felt, that realizing, that her daughters are so emotional. At least one is, and for the safety of the other one, because she's gone full Nazi. Hitler youth kid. Um, how do you stay away from your kid when they're in her brain? It's not just I feel bad for my child, and she's going through this thing that she will, eventually live through, hopefully, and like be able to make her own way. There's a siren in the background, and that's cool because I don't care. It makes it sound like my video is an emergency to listen to. Um, but what that must feel like, because it's because she knows that her daughter is going to get herself killed, or the whole, who knows, she's falling apart, and the only way for her to live through this is to basically toe the line. And so the only thing she thinks like she can do is go back. And it might be like some of you might think it's like a bit of a cop out. Maybe I thought it back then. I don't know. But like, no, I might not have kids, but I do care about people enough that if push came to shove, you would have to stand up and do what you have to for them. And that's what she does here for her kids. And it's it's terrible. It's terrible for everyone, even John, like, who just he felt like he's he's hurt too. And that's the thing. It's like easy to dismiss John's feelings, but it doesn't stop them from existing. It's part of what, like, react to things. So it's important to like remember them. Like, he feels betrayed, like he's lost love for her because she's how she's acted, and to him, this is a betrayal. But like, you know he's so caught up and delusional about everything of this. Like, he's so conflicted, but he's that guy, that the version of John that John talks about at the end, that other universe's John. This is that John that he might have become, probably would have become. This guy who's just so powerful now, and just so advanced in where he's at. And even though every move you make in that world could be your last, even his, it's almost like he just can't not do it. He's got to play this game until the wheels come off, man. And I think that's kind of what happens a little bit to the character, in a little bit, in a weird roundabout way. But they have their heart to heart. I mean, basically, he doesn't want her at this dinner for Himmler, but again, she's there for her daughters. You know that. Let's see, where am I at here? Ding, ding, ding. That she's going to be the face for her daughters. That they won't survive. He won't survive unless she can be there as the wife, the face of the. I'm losing the plot already here because I've got so many different notes here. I'm trying to keep track of them all. Crap. Okay, it's because one of my notes is like clinging over. I have everything like kind of like cordoned off, but one of the other parts for John and Helen got mixed in with the San Francisco stuff. So yeah, she understands like him better than anybody, and that this dinner, all of this, is only doing because he has to, and not like his career has to, but like this dinner. These are the things that get him, that could trip him up, are these things that he would normally just have nothing to do with. But decorum, even in the Reich, says he has to do these things. And, we don't have to like each other, but that she is there as an ally. They might not love each other anymore, but for their kids, I mean, talk about sticking together for the fucking kids. Holy shit. And that's pretty much it for Helen and John. Sorry, the brain fart there kind of derailed. Another derailed joke. I wonder where this is going. No, it wasn't going anywhere because I didn't even think about what I was going to say when I said derailed. It just happened to fit nicely to the plot later. So the next part we need to discuss this. We really just got to talk about San Francisco, the big meat of it, and then we'll cap it off with Juliana's stuff. Um, so Keto, our lovable inspector, played just brilliantly, man. Um, he is not having any of this Mingus Jones business where that guy was supposed to be the one who killed Tagomi. He finds the guy's alibi, and he just straight up tells this Masuda. I think it's Masuda. It might not be. The guy who would tell him to close the case is telling him to close the case. And when he just kind of like looks at him like, and he says like, this isn't the guy, and he just like gets kind of put in his place, or he's supposed to, like, he's loyalty is questioned. And that's the thing, like, in this kind of show about it, like, whenever this comes up, it's always question your loyalty. Every single thing is a test basically in this kind of world. And like, it's very culty because and I say that because I came from one. And when your loyalty, when everything you do is always some kind of fucking test, what kind of people are you creating? Any of them. But when he looks at his superior officer and says, "You have my absolute," like, it's just, when he says, "You have my absolute loyalty, General," I mean, the look on his face, it's like, you can't quite, I mean, maybe it's so subtle to them that they can read through it, but I mean, it's like he's trying to look like, I am absolutely loyal, but at the same time he's looking at the guy like, I would absolutely, like, just cut your head off right now. And he just, again, Mr. I think it's Joel De La Fuente, I think, if I say that right, just kills it as his character, man. But the big crux of this, man, is the auction, the attack at the auction, man. You've got Wyatt's men, doing very, very much last second, like, mission briefings, who's going to do what, where, when, why. And when we get the thing called the box, and the box speech here is kind of representative of like what, like, all these guys have done. They've done these things that are horrifying, and people always say it was war, it was war, but you know it's just, it's one of those things where you can't, you don't really want to, like, it's cliche to say, but it's like, again, if there was no war, we wouldn't have to do this. But like, it's important to, like, remember, again, I can't believe I'm saying this is a cliche to say, like, we must remember our past so that we don't repeat it, even though we're doing it right now. We do it every goddamn day. Um, but he talks about that there's a box, and he has a box for any operation like this. I open it up. Everything that happens inside this mansion tonight, it all goes in the fucking box. And when it's all over, I close the box. And it's like him explaining to these guys that you're going to have to do what you got to do. Here's the targets. Anybody gets in the way, you just kill them. And it's a horrible thing that we're doing here, but we're doing it anyway. And some shit might go down, and you're just going to have to, this is how we compartmentalize it in this group. As you can see with, like, as we'll talk about here next with Toru, right? Because they say, like, okay, put all that in the box. Keep putting all these awful, evil things in the box that we do to each other. And then open it up whenever you need to put more bad, terrible stuff in that you're about to do. And when it says, when one of them asks, like, what do you do when the box is full? And they kind of end it there, open-ended. Well, what happens when that box fills up is kind of like what happens, like, you got Toru, Kito's son, at the bar, who, in the bar, he's like at a little strip bar, the Bamboo Palace, where he has another major PTSD event. And we find out when Keto arrives, he attacks this guy. It turns violent. That's what happens when the box is filled up. You know, you talk about what do you do with all that, blah, 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 you bury it. But when it's full, it blows up. And that's when people get hurt. More people get hurt. You've already hurt more people. It's just, and again, the cycle that this episode is talking about, you know. But again, we got to skip over to these. Okay, so in the BCI prepares their attack. And this is where we're going to talk about the If We Must Die poem. Because this is what Bell recites to everybody in the room, you know, in the warehouse where they're getting ready for the attack. And If We Must Die was written by Claude McKay, and its response to the white Americans in 1919. Well, we'll get to that. They called this, it's based on mob attacks, white Americans against African American communities during the Red Summer. As I read that, I was looking for the poem. I was trying to find the poem that she said. And then I looked into why the poem exists. Why was the poem created? And that was the reason. And I heard the term Red Summer. And I don't know if I've ever heard about that before. And that made me mad because I don't remember getting taught Red Summer in school. And we were taught about a lot, you know, I was taught about civil rights and I was taught about, you know, some of the bad things, you know, but like mostly it was basic history. So we weren't told about these things. And when I read about them now, here's the thing. I don't feel bad about being a white person, right? I just feel bad as a person. Now, I'm not going to let it ruin my life over it like people that are afraid of CRT are. It's not remembering your terrible past, that the society and the other people that can't, you know, in generations past that, you know, where we all come from, did some terrible things. And it's not meant, remembering things is not like this is not meant to hurt you. It's meant to make you look at the world around you and say, that wasn't right. Let's not make this happen again. That's all it is, you dumb fucking idiots out there that don't understand CRT. Or you do understand it, right? You just don't want anybody else. You want to keep the fucking hate alive. Holy shit, I'm starting to get like my, seriously. So, oh my God. Yeah. Whew. But Claude McKay wrote this poem, If We Must Die. And we're going to read the poem, and then we're going to talk about Red Summer because I just think it's important. So, if we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. Now, when I read that poem, or looked up this thing and it came up Red Summer, this is what that's about. Okay, when I talk about like finding out about this now. And I've heard about attacks all over this, you know, I've heard about certain places and a certain events on certain days, but I didn't know about this. And if this is connected to that, I just definitely didn't know that it was this massive thing. And forgive me, but I am going to straight up read from the Wikipedia because if this isn't known by enough people, I shouldn't be feeling bad that I had to look this shit up, and I'm now telling you, so you don't have to look it up yourself. Or I encourage you to look it up, and look into more about our history. But it says that the Red Summer was a period in mid 1919 during which white supremacist terrorism and racial riots occurred in more than 3 dozen cities across the United States and in one rural county in Arkansas. The term Red Summer was coined by civil rights activist and author James Weldon Johnson, who had been employed as a field secretary by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People since 1916. In 1919, he organized peaceful protests against the racial violence. I highly recommend that you look this up. There are pictures and other things, but it's just 3 dozen cities. That's 36 cities in America. Now, how big these cities were, I don't know. I imagine that they were probably pretty big, some of them. And let's read on. In most instances, attacks consisted of white on black violence. Numerous African Americans fought back, notably in the Chicago, here we go, my neck of the woods, sort of, and Washington, D.C. race riots, which resulted in 38 and 15 deaths, respectively, along with even more injuries and extensive property damage in Chicago. Still, the highest number of fatalities occurred in the rural area around Elaine, Arkansas. Big surprise. Where an estimated 100 to 240 black people and 5 white people were killed, an event now known as the Elaine Massacre. The anti-black riots developed from a variety of post-World War I social tensions, generally related to demobilization of both black and white members of the United States Armed Forces following World War I, an economic slump, and increased competition in the job and housing markets between ethnic and European Americans and African Americans. The time would be also marked by labor unrest, for which certain industrialists used black people as strikebreakers, further inflaming the resentment of white workers. The riots and killings were extensively documented by the press, which, along with the federal government, feared socialist and communist influence on the black civil rights movement of the time following the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. They also feared foreign anarchists who had bombed the homes and businesses of prominent figures and government leaders. So that kind of brings in like the BCR line of like, you know, they pretty much became communist by almost a necessity in the show when you think about what that was. And if you definitely do some more research on this, folks, because like I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna go to sleep tonight going, oh my god, the Red Summer, ah. But I know it now. And the more I know, I'm not trying to be like a PSA or anything, but the more you know, the more you educate yourself. And I don't mean by listening to fucking people like Gary from Nerdrotic or some asshole who, if he were to suddenly make a video about, oh, people, I'd like to tell you about the Red Summer. Like I wouldn't, he would probably turn it into a story about who knows what. Anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack, like suddenly like veer left into chud territory, but it was just, people that you just don't need information from. He was like the first person. There's like a million of them that are right after him that you just go like insert, fuckhead chud right here. So that was my whole thing about Red Summer. Okay. Now, the whole thing is that they want 4 targets. There are 2 ministers. They want Keto and they want Masuda. Now, one of the funniest, this was the like actual moment of sort of levity was when Chilton is introduced to Masuda, who was called the Butcher of Manchuria. And he bows and he's like tells Masuda, decisive work. And he was trying to think of something positive to say, like to compliment his guest. So he's like, decisive work in China. And even as he's saying it, he's like thinking about what he actually said. And you can see it on his face of like, oh yeah, that's right. He's the fucking Butcher of Manchuria. I'm congratulating him for doing all sorts of terrible things. Yippee! But they're not going to get Keto. Because Keto is called to his son's attack. Turns out he killed the guy. And that look when like he's sitting there and first off the other like the cop is like shaming him like, hard. It might not sound like it because even when they're being like insulting, they're like can sound really polite, but like in this like really like passive aggressive way. Um, probably like having a conversation with your mom. I don't know. Um, but when he goes to see his son, who's like beat the shit, like he got hit too. Like this guy fucked him up on the way out. All right, on the way out the door, this guy beat the shit out of him too. And that look between father and son, where again, this is like testing Keto's loyalty. He's seeing like this. This is my son. I love him, but I wasn't there for him. He's done this. He's done these things. Because that's what he talks about, like to his dad. I mean, we might as well get to it. He's like, um, that he killed villagers. You know, and that Japan. And he's like, just kind of snaps off on his dad about like, you don't know. Like, you don't understand. I was there. Like, we're not winning. We're losing. Like, and he doesn't want to hear it, especially when he's like, we are being used by the Empire. We are just puppets. And, like, duty. He's like, duty? What the hell are you talking about? We owe this, them duty. And it's like classic I'm mad at the wrong person with Keto here, where he's just like, the more truth is thrown in his face, the more he's going to react negatively to it. And believe me, I know. I used to live with somebody who was exactly like this. You could not tell them anything, even though they knew it to be true. And the response that person would give would be an equally kind of response, which was he like throws you across the room and tells you to get out of the house. And I don't mean that. And the only reason I'm laughing is because I've experienced that kind of hostility when somebody can't even accept simple truths. And yeah, and he tells him he's not his son. So he's got all that going through his head, even though he knows he knows what he's done. He knows that this world that they've created and put their kids in, this is what it's doing to them. We didn't make a better world. We made it worse for everyone. And for what? Territory? Power that they can't even hold, because it's like think about like Game of Thrones, right? When Greyjoys take fucking spoilers, god damn it. So hum, a song for the next 30 seconds or something. So when the Greyjoys, when what's his nuts? Reek. I don't know him as Reek now. I can't even remember his real name. But when the Greyjoy boy, takes Winterfell, and they say like, we can't even hold this position. We're too far from. That was just them. They couldn't, and they're a nation, but they couldn't hold this place because they were too far from where they lived, the sea, and out to where they lived, and they couldn't. Like it was just somebody was going to come and take it from them eventually, unless they really made a move to like take over the whole north, which they could never do. And that's kind of like what I'm basically reviewing Game of Thrones now, but like it's the same kind of thing here. Also, it should be mentioned that when he says get out of the house, it's after he says you left us. So that was like the real like over the last like line for him, like, I know, get out. But meanwhile, we got the whole auction thing, man. This is masterful. This was really well done. I love that Jason O'Mara was also on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a spy. Um, I feel like he's Steve McQueen in like in this. I feel like he's our cooler king of this show, man. The things he does, the way he like just to the soldier who tells him to taste everything, and he walks up and he just kind of daintily takes the food and just puts it right in his mouth, and it tastes the champagne as they walk by, and he sips that too, and he just, I don't know, man. Jason O'Mara, I love you, man. But it pretty much starts to go off fine. They kill their guards, but they don't have Keto, and they're a go. They're just going. But Keto, again, he gets information from the guy who is looking into. He has all the other stuff from his son's stuff, and he tells him like, here's all this other crap that we're covering up. By the way, did you know that Lem Washington's in town. I have information on Lem Washington, and he's hanging out with a guy with an Irish accent. And immediately, Keto just flashbacks to seeing Wyatt at the freaking auction, and just know, like, it's not like when I say it like this, it almost sounds like, "Oh, how could he possibly? The writers are making leaps," but it's like if you know this character, he's just smart. He puts things together fast. He's that kind of guy that I can respect his, like, at least his brain and how he operates and thinks of like all these different kinds of angles, because he is right on and knows, oh my God, they're going to try to kill everybody at the auction. So the BCR is told to get the hell out of there, but Wyatt attacks. And so Belle doesn't want to leave Wyatt in there, but all of a sudden it just starts spilling out. And so snipers are shooting the hell out of this whole place. Everybody's going down. Masuda comes out and he's like shot, but they didn't kill him. And for a second, I was like, oh man, they shot him and they didn't get anybody. And I know, like, here I am, like Bloodlust Rob over here, like, he didn't kill anybody. But she sees Masuda and Belle gets out and she takes him out herself. And then when Keto finally arrives, he sees that the ministers are dead. There's a bunch of people dead at this thing. And when they get back to their warehouse, Chilton is in the back seat. And while they're pushing each other around about who fucked up when and how, and it's like the end of, it's like Mr. Orange is in the back of the freaking back seat of Wyatt's car, like Reservoir Dogs. All of a sudden, Chilton's found in the back seat of the car they came back in and tells them information. Because again, this is how you use Chilton, man. Like, I wish he was with Ed and whatever, but like he's been around all these royal people, and they know he's how he knows that about withdrawal, that the crown princess is talking about leaving, and that he personally can get a message to the crown princess to say, yeah, like, let's start maybe setting up terms. Maybe you guys really could leave us, and all of a sudden, all we'd have to worry about is the Nazis. Dun, dun, dun. And that's basically where we leave that. So how was that? Was that all right? Okay. We still have Juliana though to finish this out, and it's not as long as I thought it was going to be tonight, but it's a lot longer than most of my Man in the High Castle videos from back in the day. And where we last left her was watching her. We know John Smith has sent people over there now to find out where she is to kill her. And Russ here, she's asking Russ for a gun. And the thing I took away from this is like, okay, so he says that if you showing up with a gunshot, the sheriff like looked into you. Like, why the sheriff is talking to Russ, I don't know. But he says it's a small town. All right. Okay. So I live in a small town, so this kind of tracks. But it's just bullshit that like like, hey, there's this new girl in town. Give me the skinny. Oh, she's supposedly dead. Well, I don't care. She's a girl. I'm single. I don't know. It just felt like, why does this guy have this information? If it just says something about this society again, that this guy just can find out anything he wants about this girl without any kind of privacy. I mean, it's really nobody's business. Now, Juliana, meanwhile, in this, she's working on Tagomi's message. She does not understand what's not complete. I thought she understood this. I guess I was wrong. But she doesn't know what it fully means. But she gets to talk to Thomas, who Quinn Lord is Thomas. Now that he's actually getting to age on this show, and it's really cool. It's the other Jennifer too, but like I really like the constant of Thomas being like this really just great selfless kid. The kind of kid that everybody would want. The kind of kid who, unfortunately, like he cared so much. That John Smith proper on the show. His kid loved his family so much that he allowed himself to be killed rather than Like that's so like that's the kind of kid, and you know, like with the wrong kind of upbringing. But this kid, he's such a like I don't usually say this, but this is just a good kid, and he wants to enlist in Vietnam, and she's like telling him like, "Look, man, when there's something worth fighting for, you'll know it." But she, uh, in her meditation, sees like Tagomi. She's asking him what's not complete. She turns around. She sees the soldiers, the Nazis coming through. They can't really, you know, they don't really have to be Nazis. They're just soldiers coming through. And as you see Tagomi in the background, like stand up, and she turns around and he turns around. It's not Tagomi, it's John Smith, and he shoots her and wakes up. She wakes up. So I don't know if she took that's what's not complete, but she definitely felt like threatened the threat of John Smith still. Even now he's reached her, like, you know, I guess he's not really there, but it's what's on her mind, I think, is she has to deal with this dude, like Darth Vader, basically. And she knows she calls John, of all people, she calls John, and it's amazing. This is smart. This is smart writing. Like, if you want to know about the guy, find out from the guy, and you got him right in front of you. So he comes out in the middle of the night to talk to her about stuff. She's telling him about, you know, I've got this guy, I'm going to have to face him. And he tells about his past and what he did in the Philippines. And you can see he's shaken too. And he talks about like he didn't want to take like when his tour was done, he got promoted from within, and he if he could have, he knew he could just keep going, but he didn't want that. He saw that it was easy for his dad, but he wanted to go home. And he thinks about that guy. And when she asks him, how do you beat someone with so much power? I love this though. Just them back and forth, her knowing, him not understanding anything, and his such, you know, honest, like he's a good person. It's just like it's so it's like heartbreaking to see the regular guy. But he just says, you know, how do you beat some she says, how do you beat someone with so much power? And she said he's like he's just a man in the end. Now you could take that different ways, like, you know, well, how do you play a man? You know, but like he's just a man. Now that doesn't mean that it'd be easy necessarily, but I think if you elevate him too much, like you just got to get in the right room at the right time at the right moment. But she offers him advice because of Thomas wanting to go to Vietnam, which unfortunately now, like the conversation is meaningful to, it's meaningful in the moment to both characters, but she tells him to tell Thomas what he did in the Philippines so that he won't go to Vietnam. And he's like, you know, I think I probably will. But when she gets in her car, she gets a bag over her head, and they tell the Reichsmarshal, which is John Smith, you know, or whatever, however he called his name. Uh, he's gonna kill her, and John Smith, this one, drags the guy out, but he gets stabbed up bad. I didn't remember how this happened. He gets stabbed up bad, and he says, "Go," and he's dead. So he's not going to be able to tell Thomas anything. And now John Smith from over there can come here. And that's episode 3, folks. Damn shit. That was awesome. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I think we had some interesting conversations here, and I think I'm getting a little bit of a rhythm. So hopefully this is good. I hope you like it. If you don't, that's okay. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll be back with, I don't know how many episodes, 4, 16, 25, or just one. But we'll be back sooner rather than later to talk more Man in the High Castle final season revisited. Bye.